doing it. You do hate it. Hey, guys, look, I'm wearing my Alan Jackson shirt if you're on the YouTube video.
Our concert!
The concert was last Friday, and it was
amazing.
Why do I have the mic like right over here by me, do you think? So, just so you know, whatever your feelings are about country music, man, Alan Jackson.
A gem.
So he just seemed like such a genuinely good dude, which made me happy. And Lauren was overjoyed. I took the
pictures and videos.
The best, happiest picture of her that I've ever seen.
It's the sweetest
I love
thing
it.
I've ever seen.
It also makes me want to take her to just a million concerts and just watch her. Like there's so many videos where she's videoing the stage and I'm like watching her. And she's just so cute. Yeah. Gosh, she's so happy. Okay. This episode that I have for you today is like, I'm so excited about it for a lot of reasons. But like, I thought I had it. I thought I knew everything because I thought I knew this story. And I knew like last night, like I'm almost at the end. I'll finish it in the morning. Hey, this is the Witches Magic Murder Mystery Podcast.
I'm Kara.
I'm Megan. So, I get up at 5 a.m. like always. I've got like 2 hours before I have to do anything else. And so for 2 hours, I worked on it and I still wasn't freaking done because I discovered more things. Mm-hmm. And I was like, crap. Yeah. But here we are.
Doing
it. Done.
She got it.
I did.
Yeah.
I'm going to put my food down.
Your salad bowl?
My salad. Okay.
Okay.
I'm going to turn my computer. That's how dedicated I am to you not seeing
I won't look.
anything. Do we have any? Oh, there's new merch in the store.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Didn't know that already.
Lots of people have been snatching it up.
Yeah.
So much so that we ran out of crop tops.
Yeah. Well, the crop top was out. Like they're out of stock. So I took all the crop tops down. So I think I got to everybody that ordered one and we either replaced it with something else or just canceled that part of your order. But just so you know, like we plan to bring them back because we love them.
Yeah.
And there have been a few of you who are like, I don't wear crop tops, which I understand. I
totally fine. Yeah.
You do you. But these are really great crop tops because they're not short. No, they come down to your...
They're meet and greets.
They're meet and greets, right. They meet right at the top of your jeans.
Yeah.
And they look pretty cute.
They do.
So,
and they're kind of wider. Yeah.
Yeah. I really love them.
Yeah.
That's why I was going to try a different crop top because I was like, I don't think I'll like any other crop top as well, but I'll just get a sample. But then all the other like styles of crop tops, they're out of too. So I guess everybody's just bottom on right now. Yeah. Can we still blame COVID for everything? I feel like it should.
Yeah.
It's COVID.
COVID.
Okay.
COVID.
What? Yes.
That too.
Let's get this out of the way.
Started.
Get the party started on a Saturday night. The woman I'm about to tell you about, her name is spelled Gulielma. And if I hadn't already heard it said, I would definitely have pronounced that like Gilelma or something, right?
Yeah.
But instead this time, I 100% know.
You Googled it.
How to pronounce it. Julielma. That G is like a J.
That's what I know.
Julielma. Just rolls off the tongue.
Spelling it the same way. Found it.
Okay, like I'm 95% sure at least.
That's fine.
It's possible the person who I overheard it from said it wrong. But Julielma makes so much more sense.
It really does. It sounds like a name.
Regardless, she goes by Elma anyway, so we don't really have to worry about it. I basically just wanted to impress all of you with my pronunciation skills.
We're really good at it.
I'm so good at words.
So good at this.
Okay, so it's $17.99.
My favorite time.
We're going way, way back. July, New York City. John Adams is president.
Wow.
Thomas Jefferson is vice president. I know.
Man.
Incidentally, because I looked up like 1799 facts, James Garrett is the governor of Kentucky.
How fun.
And Lancaster, which is my hometown, is in Garrett County, which was named for James Garrett.
What?
I don't think he ever lived there or anything. It's just that the county was formed in his first year of being governor, so they named it after him.
How fun is that?
Yeah. It's random information.
Facts of life.
The last couple of years, there's been a teacher at my old high school who, she's a girl I went to high school with, and she has her students. I go talk to their class about social media marketing. Right. But she has always like, hey, do you suggest a certain episode of the podcast for my kids to listen to? Fun. And I usually suggest the Stanford Alien Abduction because it's right by Lancaster. Yeah. But I think I'll try to remember to suggest this one too. Yeah. Because of the Garrett,
Right.
Not that it has anything to do with this story at all. James Garrett, Kentucky, nothing.
No.
1799.
Okay.
A 22-year-old woman named Julie Elma Sands was living on Greenwich Street in New York with her cousin, Catherine Ring.
Okay.
Elma's father had been a Quaker preacher, and he had already passed away by this time.
Gotcha.
And then her mother was still living. She'd never remarried, but they just said she was not well. So Elma didn't live with her. So by the time Elma was 19, her mother was in such poor health that Elma could no longer live with her, and that's why she moved in with Catherine and her husband, Elias. They were Quakers, and they owned a boarding house.
I feel like Elias is a Quaker's name.
Completely. Mm-hmm. So they all lived there in the boarding house along with the other boarders, obviously. I think the Rings also owned a couple little shops and things, and so...
Little mercantiles.
Yeah, Elma worked in there too. So sometimes Catherine and Elias are described as Elma's aunt and uncle, but from the court records, it does seem like cousin's more accurate. Basically, they were distant relatives, and I think it happened so long ago, it's hard to keep it straight. But cousin seems to be the most fitting description. Catherine's sister Hope, who would also be Elma's cousin, lived there in the boarding home as well. So Elma was described as beautiful and high-spirited. And there is a quote by another cousin who said, "I always thought her disposition rather too gay for a friend." And I was like, for a friend? What are you talking about? She's too happy to be your friend. And then I realized they're talking about Quakers. Quakers are called friends.
Yeah.
This took me a minute,
Hot second.
So in July of 1799, after Elma had been living with the Rings for 3 years, she's 22 now, and a young carpenter named Levi Weeks moved in.
Of course, Levi is his name.
I know. Yeah.
Another Quaker name.
He had moved to New York from Massachusetts in order to work with his brother, Ezra Weeks, who was Ezra. I know. Well, it's also 1799.
Yeah, that's true.
So Ezra was a prominent citizen and one of New York's most successful builders. So he was kind of, well known and pretty wealthy. They were business partners. So basically Ezra would design a building and then Levi would build it. One thing I read was Ezra's the brains, Levi's the brawn of the relationship. So it didn't take long for the other boarders in the house to start noticing Levi and Elma, they spend a lot of time together. Mm-hmm. They started gossiping, the other boarders did.
Of course they did.
I mean, that's what they do.
What else do you have to do?
And they're like, they're together in Elma's room a lot with the door locked.
They're reading.
Mm-hmm. Well, if they were reading, they were real excited about what they were reading.
They were.
And maybe they were reading it out loud.
Probably.
To each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe they were
getting really excited.
You're really good at reading. You're doing a great job with reading.
I love how you
say this is some good.
Spell it out.
Because apparently the other boarders would sometimes hear noises.
Oh.
Coming from that room.
The walls.
So they're doing it,
Yeah.
Doing it and doing it and doing it well. He represent Queen. She was raised out in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
That part's not true.
Don't worry.
That's LL Cool J. Look it up. Gosh, that song.
Come on, guys.
That is weirdly the second time that song has randomly come up in my life in the past week. I'm not mad about it.
No, okay.
So naturally,
is the president back?
Naturally, there's a helicopter going by. I never think about living near the airport. I'm not that close to the airport.
No, we're kind of close to railroad tracks.
Yeah, never hear that.
Never hear it.
Okay, so naturally, this was unacceptable behavior for an unmarried couple in 1799.
It is.
So everyone,
it
was wrong. And everyone's like, well, they're obviously going to get married. That's the only logical conclusion.
Yeah, why wouldn't they?
Because again, everyone knew they're having sex.
Oh.
I put knocking boots just so we could have that moment again.
I almost said that.
Somebody's rocking, knocking the boots. At what point are y'all going to be like, Megan, you can't make that joke every time?
Just enough.
And then I'm like,
I don't think they would do that to us.
No, it's
Our
true.
listeners love us.
It's true. So this goes on for a few months. And then in the fall of 1799, Elma is not doing so great.
Oh, no.
She's kind of sick a lot and moody.
Oh, no. I've never felt that
No.
in my life, especially recently.
She's kind of down.
Yeah.
It was so bad that she even mentioned suicide to her cousin, Catherine.
Yeah.
And she talked about like overdosing on laudanum.
Oh, wow.
So it wasn't great. She wasn't doing well. Levi was not doing so great either. He was super emotional and like combative. You could just tell he was under a lot of stress. He started having like run-ins with some of the other boarders. He was just real like argumentative and yeah. So people suspected that Elma might be pregnant, which would explain her sickness and the mood swings along with Levi's agitation and stress, right? And then things changed. Suddenly Elma was really happy, overjoyed even. Like she was just all of a sudden just this better mood, you know?
Wow.
And so she told Hope, her cousin, Catherine's sister, that she and Levi were going to run away together and get married. Your face.
So sweet.
Kira's face is like, I don't feel like this is going to end well.
I don't feel like that happened.
She even had a
Is
date.
a carriage involved? In a bowling bag?
No.
Okay.
No. Poor Pearl.
I know.
Poor Pearl Brian, you guys. It's the same kind of energy, though, where, okay, so Levi Weeks, he's a boarder living in a boarding house, but his brother Ezra's pretty wealthy. And they're business partners, so you know Levi is, like, on his way up.
Right.
You know? And it's not necessarily anything, like, it doesn't really say a lot about their economic situation. They were living in a boarding house because apparently at this time, New York had grown so quickly after we became a country.
That's kind of what you did.
Yeah, there just wasn't like enough to handle all the people living there. So boarding houses were pretty common. And just like with Pearl Bryan, the guy she was dating, you know, he was going to be a doctor and he was like, you know, like saw himself as higher than she was. And I don't know if Levi saw himself that way, but I believe Ezra, his brother, saw, you know what I mean?
For
like,
sure.
'cause Ezra was already wealthy and like well-known and prominent.
Yep.
So it's that same kind of dynamic because, you know, Elma was the son of a Quaker. I mean, it's a whole different story. Yeah. She was the daughter of a Quaker preacher and just didn't have the same status. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, that's the murder of Pearl Bryan, which is, I don't know. It's an early episode. All right. So she even had a date for this wedding. It was going to be on the evening of December 22nd, which was a Sunday.
Okay.
And she made Hope promise not to tell anyone. Hope was good. She like helped Elma like plan and think, and you know they're all excited leading up to the wedding. And Hope kept the secret for a couple weeks, but then finally she breaks down and tells Catherine. And on the day before the wedding, Catherine talks to Elma, and she's like, "Have a proper wedding. Don't run off." I mean, they're Quakers. I'm sure there's I don't know anything. The whole friend thing took me by surprise.
There's like rituals.
I know nothing, but I'm sure there's some sort of like, they'd rather you have a proper wedding than, you know. So, but Elma was like, no, Levi wants this to be a secret. And so Catherine didn't push it. Elma was obviously thrilled to be marrying Levi. And on the evening of December 22nd, Catherine even helped Elma get ready for the big event. So, we're on the evening of the wedding. Levi waits by the front door while Elma's upstairs getting dressed. It's cold outside, so we're talking New York in December.
Right, it's so cold.
So Elma borrows a muff from one of the other neighbors, which is one of those things you stick your hands in. I don't know why I just scratched my desk. Catherine and Hope like give them their privacy, right? So remember, they're not supposed to know about the wedding, so they can't like be down there like, "Hey, where you going?
What y'all do?
Hey, have fun." You know, they just sort of let them have their privacy. They don't actually see them off. But they around 8 p.m. they hear footsteps come down the stairs, some whispers by the door, and then the door opens and closes. So they're like, okay, they're gone. A couple hours go by, and around 10 p.m. the door to the Rings boarding house opens, and Levi walks in. He's like, "Where's Elma?" Yeah. Catherine's like, "Huh?" But then she also knew it was supposed to be a secret.
Right.
So she thought maybe Levi was just trying to put on some sort of act, pretending that he and Elma hadn't been out together that night. And then Elma doesn't come home at all that night or the next morning.
Ooh.
And then we get into late the next day, and finally Catherine is like, Levi, look.
We know what's going on.
Yeah. Where is Elma? I know you all went to get married. She told me about the secret engagement. What's that? Where's she at? And Levi's like, what? Engaged?
How dare you?
Married, you say? I wasn't even with her last night. Don't you remember how I came in late and I was looking for her? Don't you remember that, like, I asked questions?
I wasn't here.
He's like, if she left with me, she would have returned with me.
Mm-hmm.
According to Levi, he and Elma weren't engaged and had no plans to marry.
Oh.
And he says, we had an argument last night and we ended up like just going our separate ways. I went out without her and I just figured I'd see her when I got home. That's why it was so confusing to me when I got back here last night. She wasn't here.
Funny.
He's like, I would never marry someone without my brother's blessing.
Really?
And now Catherine's like, what is happening?
Yeah.
And she doesn't know. Yeah. It's like her whole reality is shifted, right? Because she's been operating on this one conclusion and had no reason. Like everyone knew they were having a sexual relationship at the very least. And there's just no reason to not believe that they were going to get married.
Yeah.
And so all she really knows for sure is that Elma's missing. So now there's a well. It's called the Manhattan Well, and it's located near Green and Spring Streets in what we now call Soho.
I like that area.
Yeah. And right around the time that Catherine confronts Levi, a boy goes to get water from the well, and he finds a muff there.
Oh, no.
Takes a little bit of time, but eventually that muff is identified as the one that Elma had been wearing the evening she disappeared. This discovery leads some people to come forward saying that on the night of December 22nd, they had heard a woman cry, "Murder!" and "Lord help me!" from somewhere near the Manhattan Well. But apparently nobody went to investigate.
Okay.
I guess even then it's like, don't get involved.
This isn't any of our business.
Yes, it's just some woman needing help. You know how women are.
They're
But
hysterical.
for some reason, it took a week before Elias Ring and a few other people went to the well to search for Elma Sands, which I've already said I'm not going to say Juliana.
Right.
They went to the well to search for Elma. So they called this sounding the well, which at first I thought was some kind of typo, and I looked it up.
Yeah.
All that means is it's like they used to sound wells by taking poles and sticking them down to see how deep they were. So that's basically, they did that to see if anything was in the well. And on January 2nd, 1800, they found the body of Elma Sands at the bottom of the well. She was bruised and beaten. Her neck seemed to be broken. Her clothes were torn. She's been dead a little while and been in the water the whole time. So it's hard to say whether the injuries were before she died or after. Like maybe she was thrown in the well and got bruised on the way down, So the coroner ends up determining that this is a murder. It was a common Quaker tradition back then to have a public viewing of the body when someone dies. And so Catherine and everybody put Elma's body, they had it put her in a coffin and then had the coffin open inside the home. And so many people came to see Elma's body that then they decided they needed to move her outside onto the street.
Oh, wow.
To accommodate the crowds. People were outraged. Within a week, Levi is indicted for the murder of Elma Sands. So we are about to learn about the very first murder trial of the United States for which there is a public record.
Ooh.
Gentlemen of the jury, I'm curious. Bear with me. Are you aware that we're making history? This is the first murder trial of our brand new nation, the liberty behind deliberation. I intend to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt with my assistant counsel, co-counsel, Hamilton, sit down. Our client, Levi Weeks, is innocent. Call your first witness. That's all you had to say. It's that. It's that trial.
Oh my gosh.
That's why I was so excited. And I couldn't wait to tell you. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Here's the deal. We're still such a new country in 1800. We still did things the English way.
Right.
Hey, Rachel. That means that in criminal cases, Rachel can never stop listening to this podcast.
No,
I thought about that the other day.
People are going to be like, what?
We make so many jokes and talk to Rachel so much on this podcast. Rachel, you got to stick with us.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Also, if you're from this area as well, message us. We're
going to start listing all the other people, all the non-Americans. Okay, so that means that in criminal cases, the victim would act as prosecutor and the defendant would defend himself. So having a defense attorney in a criminal case that's not what attorneys did back then. So Levi Weeks hires Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr as his attorneys, along with a fellow named Brockholst Livingston, which is like the most pretentious name I've ever heard.
Oh, for sure.
Thomas Jefferson would actually appoint Brockholst Livingston to the U.S. Supreme Court later.
Ooh.
Now, like I said, Hamilton and Burr weren't typically defense attorneys, but really no one was back then. To say that Levi has an impressive legal team would be an understatement. Mm-hmm. These were the best attorneys in the country.
If you want anybody on your case, it would have been those two.
Right. And of course, they weren't cheap. But it's assumed that Ezra, Levi's brother, the builder, he's the one that helped secure the legal team. So Hamilton had actually been a client of Ezra's. Ezra had designed a home for Hamilton, and Hamilton still owed him money for it. So Ezra called in a favor, basically. And then Burr, it was like a election year, and he was going to run for president, so they think that might be why he got involved, because it was such a high-profile trial. Mm-hmm. And also, so the well that she was found in, Alexander co-founded the company that built the well, and Burr built the road that led up to the well. So they may have just had like personal interest in sort of keeping tabs on what was going on. So on top of that, both Hamilton and Burr had reputations for being womanizers and had been the subject of plenty of sex scandals. Oh. So, I mean, we know Hamilton had trouble saying no to this. So that might have been a factor in why they decided to take on Levi's case. But in Hamilton's biography written by his grandson, he said that Hamilton thoroughly believed in Levi's innocence and would never have taken the case if he didn't. Huh. Of course, Elma was not alive to act as prosecutor. Yeah. So an attorney represented her case. His name was Cadwallader Colden. Cadwallader.
I love that.
And, well, there you go.
Cadwallader.
Let's just name her that.
Perfect.
Settled.
Katie.
Yeah.
It's short.
And he would go on to become New York City's mayor and a congressman.
Wow. Mm-hmm. With that name, how could you not?
Seriously. Now, a panel of 34 jurors is selected. 34. Unlike today, where the jury selection is, handled by the lawyers, back then, the defendant was in charge of jury selection. Oh, wow. So as the name of each potential juror is read out, Levi can, choose. Yeah, accept them or strike them. And all 12 of the jurors who were eventually selected were businessmen of one kind or another. So there are no women on the trial. Having said that, that's not necessarily Levi's fault. It was required that only male landowners with property worth at least $250 were permitted to serve on a jury.
Oh, gotcha.
So as far as the whole jury of your peers thing, if you're a woman, particularly a poor woman,
where's that at?
Those aren't your peers.
No.
Okay. But anyway, these were his peers, though. So, yeah, whatever. The trial begins on March 30th, 1800. This was, as I said, the first major criminal trial of the new country. Mm-hmm. You've got a sensational murder, a young woman murdered on her wedding night. You've got a defendant with connections. Right. And you got a defendant with connections to a powerful New York citizen. Yeah. Then your two defense attorneys are basically celebrities. Yeah. And then the body had been on public display for everyone to see. Yes. So while the trial is going on inside City Hall, an angry mob was outside. You could hear them chanting, "Crucify him." Oh, crucify him. Okay. Wow. Now, earlier, after their client was arrested, back in January, so a couple months prior to the trial, Hamilton and Burr, you know how Hamilton's a big writer, they had released an op-ed in the New York Daily Advertiser, basically trying to start to sway public opinion for their client, right? And they're basically listen, don't prejudge this case. And it kind of admonished readers for trying Levi in the court of public opinion. And they're he is innocent until proven guilty. So they said, prior to this indictment, Levi Weeks did not fit the profile of a murderer since he had earned a solid reputation as a moral, sober, industrious, amiable young man. with no conceivable temptation to perform such an atrocious action.
Wow.
Hamilton's a good writer.
He really is.
The prosecution's case basically relied on the following.
Okay.
So there were plenty of witnesses that said Levi and Elma had had a sexual relationship based on everything I mentioned at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
The idea is that Elma was pregnant and Levi did not want to marry her. And the only way he saw out of the situation
Just get rid of her.
was to get rid of her. As it turns out, Elma was not pregnant.
Oh.
Now, could she have thought she was pregnant? Sure. So it still could be there as a motive, but she wasn't. It just is. Also, no one ever formally announced. Remember, they just guessed she was pregnant based on how she was acting and how he was acting. It's also like maybe she was upset because she wanted to get married. Maybe he didn't, So.
And then maybe her mood changed because he was like, fine, let's go get married.
Right. So maybe she was pregnant or thought she was pregnant, or maybe that never had anything to do with it.
Right.
The whole thing about Elma telling Hope that Levi had promised to marry her, that wasn't actually admitted into trial. The reason why is because they called Catherine on the stand and she was about to testify to it, and Burr objected, and he was like, this is hearsay, which turned out to be true. So they weren't able...
Yeah, she didn't directly tell her.
Right. They weren't able to call that into court.
Ooh.
So the prosecution also brought forth witnesses who had said, let me say that again. I put a weird emphasis on forth. Like it's four.
Four. It's not.
Four. The prosecution also brought forth witnesses who said Levi and Elma had left the boarding house together the night she disappeared. Although when pressed, they had to admit, okay, well, we didn't actually see them leave together.
We just heard
just heard it. And we thought they left together.
Okay.
But maybe they didn't.
Ooh.
When Levi was asked to identify the body, he seemed to already know where it had been found. He was like, oh, was she found near the well? Which that made everybody, they made a big deal about that. Lastly, remember how someone had heard those cries of murder and Lord help me near the well that night that she disappeared? People had also seen a one-horse sleigh led by a dark horse with no bells traveling away from the area. Now they noticed it mostly because the horse was moving.
Dashing
like it was just
snow.
going really fast. Yes, but zero bells. Zero jingles. Yeah, when I read it, I was like, one horse sleigh, what is that? All right. Yeah, jingle.
Yeah.
So the horse was going so fast, and because the sleigh had no bells, which was unusual because this is 1800.
Yeah.
We don't have light bulbs yet.
Yeah.
So it's
You
dark.
gotta hear it. Yeah.
It is dark at night in New York. So they needed the bells, and this sleigh didn't have any. Now, Levi didn't have a sleigh like this, but Ezra did.
Oh, did he?
And there were also witnesses who said they saw Ezra's sleigh go out that night. And others said that they had seen a sleigh. No, they didn't say it was the exact same one. They just said, we saw a sleigh near the well containing 2 men and a woman. And those 3 people were never identified. But, of course, the suggestion is that that's Levi, Ezra, and Elma.
Right.
So the case is completely circumstantial. There's no direct evidence that Levi killed Elma. But remember how we talked about circumstantial evidence a little bit ago? We have this tendency to be like, it's circumstantial and throw it out.
Yeah.
But it's still part of a bigger picture.
Right.
So it's not nothing. And then here come Hamilton and Burr, sir, with the defense. And the other guy who, you're not in the musical.
Oswald or whatever his name was.
Living
Cotswold.
No, that was her lawyer.
Oh, yeah.
Or the prosecuting attorney.
Something.
So Burr did the opening statement. Hamilton handled the witnesses. Obviously, they argued that the case had been prejudiced by all the public outrage, having the body laid out for public viewing and all that. And then they had counterattacks for all of the prosecution's witnesses. One of the star witnesses for the prosecution had been this guy named Richard David Croucher.
Mm-hmm.
And Levi's attorneys spent a lot of time talking about how Levi and Richard had never gotten along anyway. Like, Richard just didn't like Levi.
So it's like
they had a lot of run-ins together. Yeah. And apparently, after she had disappeared, but before the trial, Richard had been going around to people really talking about, like, trying to convince them all. Like, it's almost like he was talking about it too much, just like, let it go. But it's like, yeah, Levi, he was supposed to marry her and they went out that night, Then there was also this suggestion that Richard was jealous of Levi, like that he'd been interested in Elma, and he was like mad because Elma liked Levi. So
oh, gotcha.
Now, the thing is, I don't know how much of that is true. I just know that is the case that Hamilton and Burr presented.
Yeah.
Witnesses also came forward to say that Levi had been with Ezra and others at Ezra's home on the evening of December 22nd, so he couldn't have been with Elma, and he couldn't have been anywhere near the well. Apparently, it was Levi's habit to go to Ezra's house every evening in order to discuss work plans for the following day. And so Ezra's like, and that's what he did. He showed up. Now, when he got here, I was busy at the time, so he left for like 15 minutes.
Yeah,
but
that was it. That was it. He's back. No big deal.
But both sets of attorneys did a quick check to see, and you could get to the well and back from Ezra's house in 15 minutes. But it's just 15 minutes, so it has to be pretty perfect. I don't know.
And in the dark, there's no traffic. There's no people to stop you.
True, and you're flying on that horse if all the
you ain't got
signs
no
are
bells.
On top of all of this, there were witnesses who stated that Ezra's sleigh had not gone out that night at all. And when they questioned
the horse,
they brought the horse up.
It said nay.
He said, nay, I did not go out. When they asked like one of the women who had seen, she was like, I totally saw Ezra's sleigh go out that night. When they really pressed her, they realized that she kind of fell apart. She couldn't be sure of the day that she saw the horse and the sleigh. So that messed things up. I mean, there's a reason Hamilton and Burr are great lawyers.
Yeah.
So Burr explained away Levi's apparent knowledge of where the body was found by reminding everyone, well, they found her muff near the well. And he knew that. So it's only logical
that the body was there.
That he would be like, oh, did they find her body there too? And that was the part that really bothered me. And then I read that and I was like, oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I guess that could be true.
So then they start offering other possibilities. They were like, you know what? Elma could have been a laudanum addict. Laudanum was like a type of opiate.
Oh, yeah.
And they're like, you know, she couldn't have made it all the way to the well in the dark by herself. Let's look at some of the other men in her life. And they really start talking about Elma.
Tearing apart.
I mean, they're just like, she was promiscuous. She could have had relationships with any number of men living in that boarding home. Think of it. You're in a boarding home all together. Anybody could come in and out. There were even some people who said they had seen Elias, which was Catherine's husband, coming in and out of Elma's room at odd hours, which, if true, is problematic and would also give him a motive, particularly if he thought maybe she was
That's
pregnant.
what I was about to say.
So not great.
No.
And they also talked about that she had, remember how she was like depressed, and she talked about suicide, and they were like, maybe this is suicide. But then someone screamed murder, and Lord help me.
Lord help me.
And nobody disputes that somebody heard that those screams happened.
Okay.
Like there were several witnesses. So basically they're saying if Elma was romantically involved with multiple lovers, there'd be several suspects with their own reasons and opportunity to kill her. And then they talk about Mad Croucher being a possible suspect. And then they talk about, they're like, there's also a boarder in the house who he went on to move to England and start killing all kinds of people. I saw this mentioned in one article. I tried real hard.
Killing all the people.
I mean, they make it sound like it's Jack the Ripper. They're like, yeah, and then Jack the Ripper, he also lived there too.
And he came out of nowhere.
And then I tried to find it and I couldn't. So I'm going to keep looking just for my own satisfaction, because I'm like, just some huge murderer just happened to live there at the boarding house.
Because nobody wants to mention it till now.
Yeah. So anyway, the trial lasted 2 days. Now back then, this was a very long trial.
Yeah.
Of course, now, murder trials last forever. But back then, having a trial that lasted 2 days was unheard of.
Right.
It ends at 2:00 in the morning.
Jeez.
And at the end, Hamilton's like, we don't even want to give a closing statement. We don't even need to.
Oh.
Which was seen as this like very...
Ballsy move.
Yeah, and it just showed how solid their case was, right? Like, the witnesses have done our job for us. We don't even need to say anything else. And people were like, dang, that's cool.
Whoa.
That's what I thought when I read it anyway. I was like,
I'm going to take note of that.
Yeah. Badass. So then the judge turns it over to the jury. And when he did, he basically is like, just so you know, this case is entirely circumstantial. You don't have enough evidence to prove anything against Levi Weeks.
The judge said that?
Yeah. He didn't go so far as to say, like, he didn't direct the verdict.
Yeah.
But I mean,
he was like,
highly suggestive.
I think that you can't say he's guilty.
And that was later widely criticized.
Yeah.
But also, it's not completely improper.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like I've heard judges do this before.
Well, judges
they just kind of remind you
this is
of how it
stupid.
works. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but the thing is, he was widely criticized because, I mean, again, public opinion was like, Levi Weeks is guilty.
Mm-hmm.
The jury deliberated for, guess how long?
2 seconds.
5 minutes. 5 minutes. And they found him not guilty.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Now, even though he was acquitted, Levi was generally ostracized due to the strong public opinion against him. He had to leave New York. Mm-hmm. He eventually settled in Natchez, Mississippi. Mm-hmm. We've talked about Natchez, the Natchez Trace. And there he became a respected architect and builder. He married a woman named Anne Greenleaf. They had 4 children, and he passed away in Natchez in 1819 at the age of 43, which is pretty young.
Yeah.
But maybe back then not. I don't know.
Right.
A building he designed in Natchez, the Auburn Mansion, is a National Historic Landmark.
Ooh.
So if he wasn't the murderer, then
who was?
Who was?
His brother.
Yeah. So I've had that thought too. Like, maybe there's lots of possibilities, right? Like, maybe Levi did want to marry her, and maybe Ezra was like, absolutely not.
And he was like, you're my business partner. We're both sleeping with her. We've got to get rid of her. She's going to ruin our lives.
Mm-hmm. And either Ezra did it and Levi had to go along, or maybe Levi was complicit.
Yeah.
Because, again, Ezra, she would have just been too beneath him. He would not have approved of this wedding. But beyond that, if there was something going on with Elias, that's another one, or any of the other men, including this crazy murderer. Let's see. There was the sentence that it has about it. It says, records from Britain's Old Bailey Court now reveal that one of Elma and Levi's fellow boarders did have a hidden past. He was found violently insane just before escaping to America. But then you don't tell me the name, which makes me question that whole sentence. Mm-hmm. And I will probably only leave this part in the YouTube video instead of putting it in the episode, because I'm just like,
what? What you talking about?
But it was so weird, I had to include it for you all.
That is wild.
Or, you know, I think I've said this in other episodes, when it's just a completely unsolved murder or disappearance. Yeah. Maybe there's just some other factor we completely don't know. Yeah. Maybe there was some other man, or maybe a woman who was attached to a man that Elma was involved with, or any number of things. Yeah. Maybe she was a drug addict. I don't believe that.
No.
But maybe she was, and maybe there was someone who tried to rob her, or who knows, you know? But what we do know is that her murder is still unsolved.
Out there.
They didn't really look into anybody else besides Levi Weeks. I mean, he was indicted within a week of her body being found. Like, yeah. The last thing is that the Manhattan Well still exists, except now it is in the basement of a building in Soho. One of the articles said that the building was a restaurant, but that one was kind of an earlier article. I believe now it's a clothing store of some kind. And a lot of people have no idea it's there. The woman who owned the building had read about the story, and she was like, and she went looking and discovered, like, when they started excavating it, and discovered the well was still there. It was just kind of had been buried. So now it's there and you can go see it, but like, it's not advertised, right? You know? So I think that's pretty cool too.
Well, I think you and Ella should go.
Oh yeah.
Looking for it.
Yeah. When Ella and I go to New York.
Oh my gosh.
Which I'm so excited about.
There's a really cute coffee, like, brunch place over in Soho. I'll have to send you.
I have no idea what our schedule will be like. I think it's all pretty, predetermined for us, but I can't wait to go. And yeah, so if I can go see this, I totally would. I wish I had known about it. I mean, I've been to New York twice just for like book stuff, and it's been years ago, but I would totally have gone if I had known. So yeah, that's the story.
That's so fun.
Of Levi Weeks and Elma Sands, and the very first recorded murder trial
by Hamilton.
Yeah. I knew. As soon as I was like, this is that case, I had to do it.
It's our thing.
I know.
Hamilton's our jam.
I know. Oh, and that reminds me, if you're on the Patreon, today also you know how we love those Hamilton sing-along videos. We have one last one. Well, I bet it won't be the last, but it's one that we recorded a while ago.
Can't stop, won't stop.
Yeah. This should be our thing. If we had a bad day, it was like, you know what? Just to get ourselves like in the mood to record, let's turn on some Hamilton, and we would like sing and dance and
listen to like one or two songs, and it would turn into like a 45-minute Hamilton.
And the camera would be going because we were going to record an episode. And they would be like, let's just wait a few minutes. And we would end up having like 30 minutes of us just goofing off to Hamilton.
It's amazing.
So we've released a couple of those videos, and this is another one today. So I thought this was a fitting time to give the Patreon another silly Hamilton video.
It is perfect.
Enjoy. All right. Thank you all for listening.
Yeah, we love you all so much.
We love you. Okay, goodbye.
Goodbye.